There we are. I'll welcome everyone here tonight to the Committee of the Whole meeting for December 8, 2025. And welcome, everybody. Just before we begin, I'd like to offer land acknowledgement to the Shannon Nation. And it's kind of special tonight because a major item on our agenda is the buffer land. And of course, the buffer land came to us through the land swap agreement. And once again, I'm reminded of the generosity of our near neighbors, the Shannon Nation. So we have an agenda before us. Council, have you got any amendments? Are you happy with the agenda? I'll take a motion to adopt. Mayor Little, second by Councillor Donaldson, all in favor? Thank you. So this evening we've got two presentations. One from Serena Claver, a planning consultant with Claver Strategic Planning, and she's going to talk to us about the buffer lands. And she's got a report for us, and then it's going to be followed by a presentation by Richard Simpson, the interim chair of the Friends of the Bufferland Group, also talking about the Bufferland and the volunteer group there. So I'd like to welcome Serena to the podium. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. My assistants. Good evening. Thank you. I am going to not look at my computer. I will look at my presentation, but my name is Serena Claver. I'm a registered professional planner here on Vancouver Island, currently on contract to provide the district of Metchosin an update on the buffer lands. So taking previously conducted work and research, as all the work from the buffer lands working group, and just to provide kind of an overview of next steps and suggested recommendations. So before I get into kind of the broader context of everything, I just also want to just quickly introduce myself. So I did provide you with my name, but I also just an element of context of kind of maybe who I am and the lens that I wear when I'm looking at any sort of planning projects. I've been a planner for just under a decade. I've worked with the Islands Trust on Salt Spring and other Gulf Islands, North Saanich, City of Campbell River, various different, I've worked with the Vancouver Island University as well. So I guess I come with a very diverse portfolio, but also my own personal value system of connecting to community and the natural landscape. I do live outside of Metchosin. I do live in Langford, but I visit this community regularly and also feel deeply connected to the values that are here. So we will see how the Buffer Lands Working Group work was influenced into this update. The key things that we wanted to look at were what sort of legislative tools we can use moving forward to protect and or how the buffer lands need to be used moving forward, but there's also the applicable policies that need to be considered because they obviously shape and influence what can be done. And then ultimately we arrive at some recommendations, and there is a substantial portion that we do look at, so we'll obviously try and focus on that the most in our discussion. Some key questions through my time of doing research, but also conducting interviews and site visit, but ultimately is taking all the work previously done by the working group, but how should we or could we zone the property, looking at biodiversity and conservation needs, really maintaining the element of a buffered green space. We need to take in consideration legal implications, as well as also all sorts of legislation, including land use bylaw and the OCP, and how that translates to any sort of recommendations. Language, kind of value system variables that need to be considered in sort of zoning or zoning changes, and then ultimately, are there alternatives than kind of what has been already considered? So these are not exhaustive, but these are just some key questions that we tried to consider in this report. Ultimately, the report, I think, was 33 pages in total. The way I laid it out, it's pretty standard for a lot of planners. We provide an element of context. There was land use constraints, just to give that sort of overview. We got in more into the policy review, and then the compilation of different options, as well as I think there was about 7 pages of planning recommendations. So ultimately, the final kind of like pathway that was summarized is robust. There's many different pieces here. Obviously, we need to factor in which ones in what order, and or are any of them, does the committee agree with this direction? But we looked at park dedication. We looked at OCP amendments. We looked at a DPA amendment. We looked at the nature of conservation covenant, so the legal aspect, but we also looked at zoning as well as an eventual park management plan. And ultimately, this is the most comprehensive like avenue to take. So like I said, we looked at planning tools, and I'm just gonna summarize, but ultimately looking at Local Government Act, Community Charter, provincial legislation as the riparian area protection regulation, Water Sustainability Act, and how that influences the property, and Section 19 or 219 covenants. So just to summarize, these are some, I don't know if we want to like refer to the report at all, but ultimately, like I said, there was legislative components. I've got a matrix, a summary, and then the OCP policies, which really built into the summary of recommendations. So this, I believe I have this on page 12, or if you're going out of a PDF, it's probably on 13, just because the title is paged at 0. But ultimately, like I said, working through that land use context as well as the policy review, these were the different planning options that we can consider. So park dedication, zoning for conservation, an alternate zone, looking at the combination of rezoning and covenant, maintaining what we have, and or doing nothing, which is status quo. And ultimately talks about kind of a description of that, some example instruments, and then why. This is the next summary in the following page, I believe I've got 13 or 14, is the feasibility summary. So ultimately it's kind of overlaying all those tools with the value system that has been previously looked at how do we want to conserve and use this land, kind of like a pros and cons. Does it meet these needs? And ultimately, you know, recognizing where that certain things are stronger, maybe they don't meet those needs. But this is just to kind of give that overview of where there's the strongest tools or the strongest capabilities of reaching that conservation need. So like I said, this is the lengthy recommendation. I think I've got it starting on page 15. I don't have the report obviously open here, but we can walk through the recommendations a little bit more if that is helpful, because we do go into the rationale and the values as to why they are important. So we'll start with parkland designation. And so this is taking from a perspective of different best practices that I've used for the last decade, as well as discussions with staff as well, and kind of drawing how we could go about meeting the needs of protecting the land, but also tying in the fact that, you know, resourcing is a consideration, staffing capacity is a consideration, timing is a consideration, timing of existing plans or policy changes and how that influences things. So we do need to like really look at a very broad speaking perspective, hence why there were so many different variables and tools that were looked at. But ultimately, it's done before. We've got a case study where it's been used. Blaney Trail was dedicated. It did maintain the existing zoning, which is a similar situation here. And ultimately, the next step would be to adopt a bylaw that would consider this. But we'll work through the sequence of steps first. But ultimately, like, we need to consider the influence of OCP changes and other sort of legalities. So this is just the avenue that we can kind of take first, or at least one of. We do look at the relationship to the OCP and specific amendments. So do want to again thank staff for help here with perspective, but ultimately, like, do we keep the current designation? Do we change? How much do we change? Are we looking at OCP policies and how that sort of influences things and or doesn't, but ultimately just shows kind of advantages, disadvantages for either options. We do need to consider the relationship with the DPA, and again, thanks to staff for giving some historical kind of context, but ultimately there's value in considering amendments to it because of the relationship with the privately owned land at 1165 Neald Road. So yeah, we would want to look into the language that's there in terms of what's supported and what's not. Conservation covenants are used across the board in so many different ways. They can be used in isolation, and some would say it's like a very quick way, a quick tool to use to register on title because it signifies the intentionality of what a land's purposes are without having to go through any sort of zoning or OCP changes. You know, again, there's pros and cons, but ultimately, like, there is a value in having this connected potentially with a land trust. That's what other communities have done. It isn't necessary, but it's just something that is potentially encouraged, and it really depends on, yeah, if the district wants to actually be the holder of that covenant. Whereas, because, yeah, like situations like Islands Trust, they have a conservation board or entity that actually will hold those covenants, or land stewardship funds and trusts in community will hold the actual covenant. It can be a combination of the district and that land trust. And then we did look at zoning and how that influences things long term. Again, looking at how zoning changes need to be conducted and carried out and in alignment with other policies. So it's just a matter of kind of sequentially what makes the most sense. So this is, again, a recommendation. It isn't what you have to do, but ultimately, one piece was just looking at what the current title and legal notations on title for the land actually speak to. I didn't have the ability to be working with legal counsel at all for the extent of this project review, but ultimately that's definitely a first step, and then moving into looking how that then sets up a park dedication bylaw to consider the buffer lands dedicated as park without any sort of zoning changes. So you'd go through that legal confirmation, then move into drafting a bylaw. And then the next step is looking at the potential OCP amendments, DPA amendments. You would want, obviously, them to be in unison with any sort of OCP updates. The conservation covenant can be separate, but it can follow afterwards. Then obviously looking at zoning. Largely speaking, a park management plan I know has been discussed at one point. I did recognize that the Bufferlands Working Group had some criteria already set out for a park management plan, and so that was also considered and kind of detailed a little bit more in one of the appendices. And then just to kind of clean some things up, because there are municipal lands that were dedicated at time a subdivision, but they may or may not have the complementary zoning associated with it, which is obviously the case, not necessarily subdivision, but the zoning here, and that's obviously why we were considered some of these options. I do have the presentation ending there, but happy to kind of walk through options a little bit more thoroughly if we want to, but do also want to respect the time and I'll allow for question Q&A if needed.
I think that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's I really enjoyed reading the report and your presentation this evening. Fills in some of the details. It seems to me you capture the conservation approach that we've been talking about.
Correct.
And then what I'm looking at, if I understand properly, looks like an efficient approach for us as well, given limited resources. Can I just check one thing?
Sure.
When I look at the front page of the note, it talks about a motion that might come from us tonight.
Correct.
Would be get that title review, which is at the top there, and the legal confirmation. And that's just sort of clearing the path to know what's there, if there's anything encumbering us.
Correct.
That's how I interpret it.
Correct.
Then we would go, it looks to me like immediately the next step would be to investigate the Section 219 covenant.
I think I may have mentioned the drafting
of the park designation
correct.
First.
Yes.
Park
so
designation
following
first.
This process, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you get the legal review, park dedication, and then a Section 219 covenant, and then look at all the other options.
Yeah. So some could say that it doesn't necessarily follow the sequence. Leaving out obviously the OCP amendment, the DPA amendment. And so it's more just factoring in, I don't want to say quick tools. And so this is doing the legal title review following step one, looking at next option of drafting a park dedication bylaw, step two. Could end it there, or do you want to really tighten doing the legal review and also consider the drafting of a 219 covenant at the same time, recognizing what timing, resourcing, staffing is required for OCP amendments, DPA amendments. And then do you then factor in an actual more thorough review of what resourcing and staffing is going to look at to actually consider these other options, and or are they necessary? So that's kind of the angle that was taken.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, that makes sense. And that's why I figured that it was slightly different than the sequence.
Correct.
Here. So what potentially we would do is get, if you will, maximum protection.
Correct.
And then pick up the other pieces as time goes
Correct.
forward. It's not as urgent in the sense of protection.
Correct.
Very good. So maybe I can see if others have questions to ask Serena. Councillor Shukin, perhaps you'd like to go first.
Sure. So, Ms. Klaber, thank you very much for the presentation tonight, and also jumping into this project. And the reason we asked you, Mr. Payette, sought and found you and brought you on board is just to address the fact that our current consulting planner is up to her neck and doing wonderful work in terms of helping us meet the provincial housing requirements. So, and thank you for stepping into a subject that has a lot of background to it. So, yes. Wonderful job. Yes.
And I apologize if I didn't necessarily showcase the integrity and the fulsomeness of all the history, recognizing that obviously I've only been touching this project for a few months, so tried my best, but yeah, sometimes that can get missed.
Yeah. So a question to you through our chair here. So the bylaw itself can be fairly specific in terms of allowed uses on the piece of land that's being designated park.
You're talking about the park dedication
exactly,
bylaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually I think I put in a template of some language, and also recognizing what has been considered before. So let's see what. So the draft template that I have, it talks about like the purpose of it. So here it talks about ecological protection, passive recreation, right? The strong objective and intentionality and value system, of what you intend to use that land for. So it gives like a strong perspective of how you want that land to be used or not, how or not to be used, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I guess I'm batting around the concept of the bylaw, the park dedication bylaw, and whether there is a need for a new zone. And so one of the things that I think a weakness of a bylaw is it can be rescinded by a council.
Correct.
And where that fits with a park bylaw, though, because you've dedicated the land as park, and to remove that, there is that added requirement of getting elector approval. So I'm not sure how that all works, and that there's maybe some legal issues there that we maybe need to tap into a lawyer.
I think regardless, that obviously needs to be considered, like I said,
Yeah.
with looking at the title review and any
Okay.
sort of encumbrances and how that impacts things. Any sort of changes like this, there needs to be a legal review. And it's
Okay.
just a matter of maybe like doing enough preliminary work so you have specific questions that you want to like strategically and effectively lay out versus going back and forth here and there.
Yeah. The one consideration that I think we should maybe give to our land use bylaws, if you look at the designation for park, currently P3, there's, in the whole thing, I think there's one mention of park. That P3 can serve the purpose of a park.
Right.
That's it. So you're allowed to subdivide. I forget what the uses are. I don't have it with me right now, but it's really light. And so there might be some consideration given to doing a new P4 zone. In fact, and interestingly enough, I met last week with a number of residents who were interested in potentially applying such a zone to lands in their area as well. So it might be something for this committee to have a look at. But
Can I offer maybe just one? I think one thing that Serena's offered us is that if you do a park if I understood properly, park dedication, that's one thing that can be done relatively easily by us. And then if we were to invoke a section 219 covenant, then and if we involve a third party in that changes the dynamic in terms of reversal by a council.
I think, again, probably with any of these options, and this was something I was going to be leaning more on the CAO for, but to actually like lay out all those costing, right? And then how do you then weigh out your options and considerations there based off of what the feasible budget is moving forward. So I don't have those numbers for you. I apologize, but that would obviously be the next step, is to quantify everything and then like really dial in like the timelines. Okay, yes. This is going to take 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, right?
I think Councillor Shugan's got another question.
I do. I think I might just defer to my colleagues if they have any questions at all. Better formulate mine. Mayor Little?
Yeah, through the chair, I just thank you for the report. And I like all the different tools that you reminded of us that we have to provide the greatest amount of protection to this land. And I think that's what the objective is. One of the questions that I have is regarding the Center Mountain DPA, since the property at 1165 Neil Road is also rezoned. Part of that, anything that we do would obviously exclude that property, right? That property would stay as it is now.
Yeah, I think that was part of mentioning of removing, or a possibility is removing that the buffer lands from the DPA entirely, or the consideration of any sort of language that is used and how that influences both of the properties. But the point being was to recognize the historical relationship to that DPA, and when it was created, how it was created, the purpose of that was created. So, but yeah, it currently covers both. So do you want to amend it and remove the buffer lands from that, and then keep the other parcel still, remaining, correct? So it's more to draw attention on the relationship there and the value as to why you may or may not want to amend it and how. Mm-hmm.
Great, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you for your report. It was a lot of information, but having been part of the working group, there was a lot of discussion too. I don't think that I have any questions. There's a lot to still go through and figure out which paths we're going to do. If we're going to do it in sections, or there's a lot of different recommendations here.
Yes, there are. And it was more like, how do you protect this land as much as possible? And so it was, here's the different tools, a potential sequence to consider, but ultimately, obviously, looking at that legal aspect, probably quantifying everything, and then being able to kind of carry forward, drafting a bylaw and then moving forward with covenants and any further amendments. Makes most sense.
Great. Any other questions? Councillor Shipman?
Thank you. Through you, Councillor Donalds, or Councillor Gray. You mentioned time before, and thanks, it's a really great point, because we're running out of time in this current term. And I would say the only body I truly have faith in that we can move on is this current council right now. So what strikes me, and I guess I'm going to ask for your confirmation as well, or your perspective on this, is probably the most expeditious route to go. I think it's clear on this, is the parkland dedication followed by the 219 covenant, and whether we get it in, at least we'll get it in the process.
Correct. And that's why I guess that was missed, but that was considered timeline wise of bringing in the 219 covenant sooner than the other changes, recognizing that OCP changes take a lengthy amount of time and procedural steps. Yeah. And that you would want to obviously line up with other OCP needs, like versus it just being independent. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
It's a great report for us to chew on. And we may have some questions when we get to the item again. If you're still
Okay.
here, that'd be
Sounds
great.
great.
Thanks so much. And invite Richard Simpson up to the podium. And Richard's from the Friends of Bufferland group. Richard, help me. What's the formal name?
Friends of the Bufferland. Yeah, Friends of the Bufferland.
Welcome.
And just thank you for the previous presentation. And as a resident, I'd certainly support the permanent protection, which would be offered by a covenant. So that's just my own opinion. Thank you for that. Good evening. My name is Richard Simpson. I live on Boulder Path Road, which is about a kilometer up the hill from the access to the bufferland. I am the interim chair of a newly formed group of volunteers that are committed to protecting the natural green space known as the bufferland. The purpose of my short presentation is to give Council an update on the planning activities of the Friends of the Bufferland and our plans for 2026. Next slide, please. Thank you. As the majority of Metchosin residents know, the bufferland is the 113 acres of natural green space, generally bounded by Neeld Road to the south, Happy Valley Road to the east, and Langford Center Mountain industrial and residential developments to the north. This image is somewhat dated because although the south and north lobes of the bufferland remain green and unchanged, the Center Mountain landscape continues to be dramatically transformed. In the year or so since the Bufferland Working Group completed its deliberations and submitted its report to Council, a small group of Neeld Road residents met to discuss what we could do on a volunteer basis to support the protection, restoration, and preservation of the bufferland. Next slide, please. Thank you. During those meetings, we crafted a vision that we were volunteers committed to a thriving, biodiverse, natural area protected by the community in perpetuity. We formed a small steering committee comprised primarily of Neald Road residents with the added expertise provided by Alison Leduc of the Bilston Creek Watershed Protection Association and Councillors Shukin and Donaldson as observers to our discussions. We have started a Friends of the Bufferland network, which includes a number of households who had already participated in 2 successful broom clearing events, other Neald Road residents, and a number of other interested people who contacted me as a result of the recent article published in the Muse. Next slide, please. We have begun to draft a framework of what a Friends of the Bufferland strategy will look like, which will include 4 primary pillars. In restoration and conservation, the short-term goal will be primarily removing invasive broom and developing a strategy for replanting native vegetation. For community engagement, the goal will be primarily developing a volunteer base for organizing and communicating broom clearing, trail maintenance, and other on-site activities. Under monitoring and advocacy, we hope to develop volunteers who will act as Metchosin's eyes and ears on the bufferland. Finally, and perhaps somewhat ambitiously, we see great value in supporting the tracking of wildlife and plant populations, monitoring water quality, and other environmental parameters. Next slide, please. We have developed a draft 2026 action plan, and I'd like to point out a couple of areas that may be of interest to Council and others. Clearing broom will be a priority for 2026, and we have tentatively identified 3 broom clearing events likely scheduled for the 3rd Saturdays in January, February, and March of next year. Partnership and collaboration is key for the success of the Friends of the Bufferland. There are many other organizations that have the expertise and learned experience that we can adopt. This includes Bilston Creek Watershed Protection, Broom Busters, and similar organizations in Saanich, Colwood, Langford, and elsewhere. Here in Metchosin, the Parks and Trails Advisory Select Committee's Parks and Trails Master Plan refers to the bufferland generously, and PTASK's recommendations for a Metchosin-wide volunteer coordinator, a revitalization of the Trail Stewards Program, are initiatives very much aligned with the vision for the bufferland. The steering committee did have discussions about the name bufferland, which we feel may not accurately describe this very special Metchosin-owned space. Metchosin Creek runs through this green space on its way to Bilston Creek, and we would be supportive either now or in the near future of the Parks and Trails Master Plan recommendation of referring to the bufferland as Metchosin Creek Protection Area or a similar name. We hope to recruit 40 active volunteers through 2026. Some of these volunteers will help clear broom, others may choose to be trail stewards or monitors, and others may engage in plant and animal inventory work. But I would like to emphasize that anyone can become a friend of the bufferland without ever stepping onto the space. They simply support any efforts to protect this special Metchosin-owned green space. Next slide, please. Thank you. In summary, the Friends of the Bufferland will work to build our network, grow our list of Metchosin residents interested about what is happening on the bufferland, collaborate with similar organizations who have walked this path before, learn from them, and adapt their experience and knowledge to the work we have to do on the bufferland. We'll communicate regularly with our Friends of the Bufferland network, Mayor and Council, the CAO, and district staff. We want to thank the mayor and council for continuing to support initiatives to protect this very special green space. The CAO and district staff for providing time for us to explain our activities, to the Muse for continuing to profile the bufferland, and those here tonight or listening online. I am extremely optimistic that we'll develop a sound, sustainable framework for the protection of this very special Metchosin green space. Thank you.
Richard, thank you very much. That's a great presentation, and your enthusiasm comes through. It's wonderful to think that so many people have become interested and been in touch and already started working on the bufferland. So kudos to the whole group. Really appreciate it. I wonder if there are any questions here from members of council. Certainly, congratulations.
Thank you.
Through you, Councillor Gray. Not so much a question, but I just want to thank you for stepping forward. I know you've been part of the Bufferland Working Group and also the Broom Polls as well. And yeah, it just, groups need someone to coordinate and to step forward. So I want to thank you, Mr. Simpson, for doing that. And it's, I was aware that you were recruiting, but I wasn't aware it was 35 households you got in the area. So I think that's a good marker.
And I think with each household, you're talking about 1 or 2 or 5 people that can come out. And again, in a broom clearing event, if somebody comes out and does 2 hours work, that is fantastic. If somebody comes out and pulls two plants, that's 2 plants that aren't there anymore. So I think over the course of time, we'll get a good program in place. And again, if we can work with other volunteers that are doing similar work, whether in Metchosin or elsewhere, I think we can. I'm confident we can do it. So, yeah.
Just one other. The Bufferland Working Group started in April of 2023. We met 9 times. Councillor Donaldson was part of that. We held 2 public information sessions, and there was public input all the way through it. It is a bit despairing in some ways that it's taken us this long to get to this point. But would you agree that we've had good dialogue about the bufferland? Sorry, it's a bit of a leading question, but I think we've had good dialogue about the bufferland in the future, and I think there's consensus from the people who've chosen to speak. Any thoughts or agreement, disagreement with that?
Oh, I think so. I think the discussions of the working group were outstanding, and I think we've got a diverse viewpoints. I think that as I was talking to Councillor Gray earlier, and I'll talk to anybody, we've got a bit of time to make this right. I mean, even though those of us that live in the area, we can hear the explosions and the clearing, every day, it's going to take a little while for a house to be built there. And so we have a bit of time to get this framework for protecting this space. And I think through 2026, we will have a really great framework for broom clearing, for identifying how we're going to replant, for monitoring the stream, for, that Metchosin. I wouldn't want to walk down in that Metchosin Creek today because I'm sure there's a lot of water coming down there. And we've got to figure out how we're going to manage the trail, stream intersection. What's that going to look like? And thank goodness we've got, Bilston Creek expertise to help us out. So yes, we've had great dialogue, and I think not only am I enthusiastic, I think everybody I've spoken to that has communicated with me, they are equally enthusiastic. And again, one of the reasons why I think we're thinking about renaming it for Bufferland is Bufferland carries a bit of a history, a bit of a political dynamic to it, and I think we need to look forward that this is a Metchosin Creek space. So that's why I think it might be wise to change the name and be looking forward.
Thank you very much, Richard. Oh, Mayor Little's got a question or comment.
Yeah, thank you, and congratulations. This was one of Council's priority in the very beginning. was to look at the whole framework regarding the bufferland and move towards conservation. And I know what Councillor Shukin is saying. He's impatient, but nothing in municipal government is quick. Everything takes a very long time, especially if you do it right, with a good process and with good public consultation. So thank you for being involved, and I think this is one of the things that Councillor Shukin and Councillor Johnson wished for when they brought up at the working group the necessity to protect this land. We need to have eyes on it and hands on it. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
And I'd like to also applaud you and the others, specifically the neighbors in that area, recognizing how much of a gem this green space is, and also identifying the limited access in order to keep it the gem that it is. Much of the work done through the working group was as a result of what those neighbors during the land swap discussions and concerns have continued to bring forward. And I'm very, very pleased to hear that the momentum of interest is growing beyond our neighborhood. It's been a joy to be involved in that process since the day an ad went into dispose of it, but into local paper. But how the momentum has come to reality, where people appreciate what we have there and the purpose of what that was, to protect those neighbors, but also to protect the creek that runs all the way through our community and into our lagoon. So I look forward to continuing to come out to those work parties and whatnot to help maintain what we have. Thank you very much.
Good. Just not in weather like today.
No, there is a lot of water coming off.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So council, we'll just turn our attention now to public participation. Would anybody like to speak this evening?
Gary Lamb, Hackmore Drive. First of all, I wanted to apologize at the Thursday, December 4th meeting. I made a error in that I thought council had approved the 40,000 expenditure for the EOC roof, when in fact they hadn't. And when I got home, I looked at the YouTube presentation. I determined that you had simply passed on it. There was no decision made. So again, I apologize for making that comment.
Thanks, Gary. Anybody else like to speak this evening? Seeing no one at the microphone, let's carry on with our agenda. The next item we've got is adoption of minutes. And the first set up are the October 23rd, 2025 Special Finance Committee Budget Meeting minutes. Could I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Move adoption.
Moved by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Approved. And the next set are the November 6th, 2025 Special Finance Committee Budget Meeting minutes. And I'll look for a motion to approve those minutes. Thank you, Councillor Shukin. And seconded by the Mayor Little. All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Then we've got the November 10, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Thank you, those are approved. Then we have the minutes of the November 20th, 2025 Special Finance Committee Budget Meeting.
Moved adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? That motion's approved as well. Thank you. Then we've got receipt of minutes from advisory select committees. The first set are from the October 28, 2025 Healthy Community Advisory Select Committee minutes. Thank you very much, Councillor Shukin. Seconded by Councillor Dalton. I saw one point in the minutes that was of interest to me, and that was Vito Mitchell presented at Healthy Communities and asked about the committee's role in amplifying volunteerism. And I thought that might be an interesting, we haven't really asked the Healthy Communities to do, or, pick up any particular items, and that might be one that we could consider in future. So perhaps, no, for tonight, but just to highlight that point in their minutes, and we might pick it up another time. The next minutes are the November 4th, 2025 Fire Hall Steering Committee minutes. Thank you, Councillor Shukin, seconded by Mayor Little. And just a note there to thank the committee for their work on the open house. All in favor? Thank you, that's approved. Then we've got the Parks and Trails Advisory Select Committee minutes of November 18, 2025. Thank you, Councillor Shukin. Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Thank you,
Councillor Gray,
approved.
I just will mention that there is an item in here that we'll be talking about a little later around the Trail Steers program.
Great, yes, looking forward to that. Thank you.
And I also want to welcome Mr. Payette, who said he'd be here at 7:15. It was pretty close. So.
Welcome, Mr. Payette. So the next item on our agenda is the request for development variance permit at 909 Beckingham Place, Lot 6. And I might invite our planner, Tara Johnson, to come up. And she's going to tell us a little bit about this. Thank you.
Good evening. The owner of Lot 6, 909 Beckingham Place, has requested a variance to increase the distance between a proposed detached suite and a proposed principal dwelling. The owner plans to build the detached suite first and live in it with his family, and then build the proposed principal dwelling later. The owner plans to keep the dwellings all within the family, with planning to have the mother-in-law live in the detached suite later down the road. The lot has riparian area. It also has a sensitive rocky outcrop system, and there's an environmental covenant on the property. And the owner has submitted environmental reports, and they've also submitted their own due diligence report to illustrate all the work that they have done so far on the property. They would like to reduce the amount of clearing, vegetation removal, tree removal as much as possible, and work with the land, which is one of the reasons why they're asking for the variance. So they would like to have a little bit more increased privacy, but they're also looking for flatter areas for building the site, reducing blasting and whatnot. And after reviewing the reports from the environmental and visiting the site, the proposed configuration for the variance request is meeting the clustering requirements while still having environmental protection as a high priority. Planning is recommending option 1 to move forward with it. The applicant, unfortunately, is away and they can't attend, so I'm here for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. It's a pretty complete report with a lot of details, and I can see that that's because of the covenant that the approving officer requested and worked on it with the developer, and I think with yourself on. So thanks very much for that. Can I ask, what's the status of, is the entire subdivision now been approved, or is it just the first half? Where are we at generally?
I believe the entire subdivision has been approved.
Great, thank you. I wonder if anyone has any questions to ask of the planner.
Not so much a question, but thank you very much for walking through this, Ms. Johnson. It is typical when we have DVPs to request a site visit, so I would be prepared to make that motion. I've had a chance to walk with Lita. They've been very forthcoming in having us out to site. I'm pretty sure I know the property or the area, but it'd be great to see site specific where they're talking about putting the secondary suite and the areas in that will actually possibly be protected by making the move there. So, and I think we'll do that in 2 motions typically. Yeah. So, great. Oh, one other thing though, just to clarify, this isn't a variance to allow a secondary suite, because secondary suites are allowed per the zoning of this, of the subdivision. So this is already, baked into the zone itself. So this is about the setback away from the principal residence. So, yeah.
Great. Any other questions? I had another question, and that was, with this, with the secondary suite, when it's built, would it be working off the same well as the principal house, or is there another well required? I see there's a second septic field. I wasn't sure about the water supply.
Through the chair, I believe it's the same, but that is something that can be confirmed for the next meeting.
Thank you, that'd be great. And the other question I have is, if Councillor Shukin's correct, we're just looking at the distance between the buildings, I think is really the question before us, the variance. In the environmental report provided by the proponent, the owner of the property, they've laid out, they've given us a conclusion, which is that they think that if there's implementation of the recommended mitigation measures in the environmental report, then they say that will further protect the environment throughout the proposed development and minimize environmental impacts. Can we require, in the variance, can we require or seek that the recommendations by their environmental consultant be done?
Yeah, through the chair, we can add the environmental report as a schedule, if you would, to the development variance permit, so it could be Schedule B.
So that would be what their environmental consultant suggests to be done would be done. Great, thank you. And I wondered, the other question I would have is, if when we meet again to talk about this, if we might get a copy of the covenants or the covenant that covers the property.
Yeah, I will provide it with the next staff report.
Thank you so much. So maybe that's all the questions we have on that. And Councillor Shukin, you were open to making a motion?
Sure. I would move that the committee request staff to send notice to landowners within 60 meters of subject property, informing them of the DVP 2503 application, its purpose, and the January 12th, 2026 meeting date when issuance of the permit will be considered. So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? So we'll call the question. All in favor? That's approved. Thank you very much. And Councillor, you had a second motion.
Sure, I would move that the committee request staff set up a site visit with the owners of this property of DVP 2503 as soon as possible.
Great. Good. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So any further discussion? All in favor? Approved. Thanks so much. So the next item we have on our agenda this evening, Councillor Shukin, I think it's over to you for your councillor's update. And as you mentioned, you've got the Trail Stewards program there. And so, and a few other comments, I think.
Yeah, I think we're actually at 712 Bufferland Update Report.
Yes. 7.1.2, agenda item Bufferlands Update Report. So we received the report earlier this evening. And we've got a proposed motion to go with. Just going to find my way here in the documents. Here we are. So on the first page, there is a recommended motion coming from the consultant. Councillor Shukin.
Sure, thank you, Councillor Gray. I'm happy to make the motion. The one thing I want to just flag is the amount of time, as I mentioned earlier, it has taken to move through this process. So the Bufferland Working Group, the concept of it was introduced in January of 2023, gave its final report in October of 2023. I brought forward the idea of the new P4 zone last October, and we've now got the report done, so it's just moving slowly, as Mayor Little mentioned. I think that there is some considerable urgency to getting work done on this before the end of the term, and I would encourage us to take action as we can, and support staff in moving ahead with this. So if I could, I would move that the Committee of the Whole recommend, I'm going to just do a few little modifications to the motion as here though, would move that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council direct staff to pursue the following: a title review for the proposed draft of park dedication bylaw. I think we can strike the bracketed part. A section 219 covenant for the a draft section 219 covenant for the long-term protection of the bufferland. A report to Council with draft bylaws and covenant text, and also a review of next steps and all other planning recommendations. So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So discussion. Would you like to say a little bit more, Councillor Shukin?
I don't think so. I think I've said all that I can say. Yeah.
Very good.
Thanks.
Yeah, the only thing that I would like to, and I guess because it is draft, we will get more information from staff as far as what a timeline would be, and then what would those next steps be, and if we could do it.
Yeah, and
in which timeline, I guess is what it is, like this year, 6 months, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, and I mean, that might just be an action that we can request of Council, especially a lot is covered under a review of next steps on all other additional planning recommendations. So
I think so. I mean, what impresses me, I take your point about timing, but I also take Mayor Little's equally cogent remark that it takes time to do things in local government. What I like about the proposed approach, well, I so much appreciate the analysis that's been done and the work that's laid out here, and the idea that we would achieve protection of that land relatively quickly through the park dedication bylaw and then the section 219 covenant. And then it seems to me we have time to get to the next issues, the zoning and that, because we've actually protected the property from development. So that's what appeals to me, and I'm certainly in favor of proceeding. Mayor Little.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair to Councillor Shukin, we had talked, I think it was with your discussions with the Bufferland Working Group, with the potential for an additional covenant on it by a third party, which would confer extra protection, the 219, the other one. What are your thoughts regarding the necessity for that? And then my second comment is, I don't think we need to do these in succession. Some of the items could be looked at concurrently. So I don't think we need to complete one and then start the other. I think some of the items can be completed concurrently, which should speed up the process a little bit.
It sounds like having a third party endorse and be a covenant holder would be an extra layer of protection. And we know of two groups that are active in this area, HAT and also the Metchosin Foundation, who both can hold covenants. It'll be interesting to see how things unfold. And of course, the park management plan will be interesting to get developed. And in the case of the bufferland, I think the park management plan can be very specific. Activities will be encouraged in this area. This area is highly sensitive, and we will take steps to limit access, stuff like that. So, there's so many different, I think, pieces to what is going to be one of the most challenging planning exercises, if you will, and quests, if you will, probably in kind of the greater Victoria area, just given the amount of population on the one side and limited population on the Metchosin side. And it is a community-owned piece of property as well. So, yeah, lots to sort through.
Thank you both. Okay, we ready for the question? And clear on the motion. There's just a small change in the brackets, I think, and adding the word draft before section 219 covenant. So all in favor? That's approved. Thanks so much. And I guess there was one other, I think, telltale comment from Mr. Simpson, and that was naming, that we should think about what the name of the bufferland might be as we go forward. Not an issue for tonight, but I think it's a good reminder for us. And so something I'm not sure we'd be talking to the bufferland the friends of the bufferland. We'd be talking to PTASC and to the general public about it, I suppose. But the name change is appealing. So, Councillor Shukin, I think we now are to your update. And you'd mentioned the Trail Stewardship Program is one of the things you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and should it please the committee, there is a recommendation that Parks and Trails has brought forward with a request that the committee or council direct staff to firm up the requirements of the Trail Steward Program. So this is a reawakening, if you will, of a program that apparently was active a number of years ago. And the key part of this program is we have volunteers who have made a pledge or a commitment to monitor certain trails in the district, and it'll typically be those that they walk every day. And the key thing is that they are our eyes and ears on these trails. So whether it's a tree has fallen, there's flooding, there might be activity that is undesired, say mountain biking, in sensitive areas. So again, eyes and ears. And what I've brought forward here through PTASC is a draft letter that outlines the responsibilities that a trail steward would undertake and clarity in terms of what they could not undertake, say the operation of a chainsaw. So in speaking with Mr. Payette and Ms. Hansen, there are still some outstanding issues that we have to work through in terms of signing up volunteers, where we stand with insurance, and liability issues. But one of the things is we've been talking about this for about a year now at the PTASC level. And so this is in some ways a kickstart to just get more serious about the potential of the program. And what's interesting is if you look in the minutes, PTASC, there's two very elaborate motions, nicely worded from PTASC. We have somebody who's actually willing to step forward and be our first trail steward, someone who's very experienced and known to the district and knows what they're doing. So we do have our first volunteer, and it'd be great to firm up and get them involved. So, yeah. There it is right here. If you look at the letter, I think it is clear at a certain level in terms of what the trail steward can and can't do. And that's, I think, the most important thing. And this isn't about taking any work from our great public works team. It is about essentially being eyes and ears, so we know what's out there. So,
would you like some comments on that sheet right now, please? Great. Mayor Little or Councillor Donaldson, any thoughts? Just looking at the page. Mayor Little.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for this. It is a program that actually does exist today. I know of two of the trail stewards, one in the Blinkhorn Park and in the Buckbrush area, that routinely help to monitor the parks, and when there is minor issues, they deal with it, and when there's major chainsaw issues, they forward to the trails coordinator. And so I think this is just a continuation of that program, and I think it'll be wonderful to get this solidified and recruit more volunteers to the program. Thank you.
And it's this has been a program that's been talked about for a lot of different years. And people have come and they've gone. One of the things that I would like to encourage PTAS is to visit the Metchosin Equestrian Society's next meeting, and as they are trail users and they frequent trails all over throughout the community. Once upon a time, there were a lot of them that would do a lot of work parties throughout the trail system. So it'd be nice to resurrect their enthusiasm again to do that. And there's, like I say, there's a lot of them that are quite active. They would, if they knew more about this, that would bring us all together to, as volunteers, protecting our green spaces.
Oh, sorry, great point.
Yeah, I was just going to offer, I mean, and I didn't know about Buckbrush, but of course Jim Nann's work is documented here, but we know of him and what he's been doing for so long now at Lincoln Park. And then there's a new group at the Bufferland. So we've got a good start. I think it's a great idea, Councillor Shukin, what you're working on here. And it seemed that the job is largely reporting and then just a minor cleaning the trail if there's a minor problem. So I could think of dogs, bikes, garbage are kind of the trouble ones. What might be difficult is just being sure that people are clear about what their role is and that they don't run into problems, in confronting folks. So that's just the one thing that comes to mind, asking people to be on the trails and then noticing problems. Maybe some problems are best dealt with by reporting, but rather than engaging. So that'll be something that PTAS can talk to the folks about, and of course we've got people with experience who can help guide those discussions. I wondered too, not to create more work, but I noticed the trail stewards would be recruited and recommended by PTAS and then confirmed by the CEO. That sounds great, but it might be then they're looking for a criteria. I don't know what they would be if you're selecting one person from another or how one makes those decisions. But when you think about people applying and asking to do a job, we may want to think of what the criteria would be, just to make it positive for everybody. And did you want to make that motion, Councillor Shukin? I'm open to doing that if you'd like.
I would move that the committee recommend that council direct staff to firm up the requirements for a trail steward program, with the program commencing as soon as possible in 2026. So moved.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. So moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. And any further discussion? Councillor Shukin?
Councillor Gray, just picking up a point you made about the Friends of the Bufferland. Ideally, the work that we would do with staff, again, to firm this up, will have applicability to again, Friends of the Bufferland or any other stewardship groups that want to do work on district land. And I thinking about Bufferland or the Metchosin Creek Protective Area, volunteers are going to play a critical role in protecting that, and we just have to make sure we're clear on the district's role, our processes, and the volunteers have to be clear on their role too. So that's part of the larger goal with all of this.
Super. Thanks so much. Now you want to carry on, I think, with a different comment.
Oh, sorry, did we vote? I don't know if we voted.
All in favor?
Okay.
Approved. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Just
Good
one final.
reminder.
Okay, thank you. So one final thing, Parks and Trails Master Plan, we had the open house on November 22nd. About 30 people showed up. You can see the key themes here, including a mention of the park or the Trail Stewards program. We've had, actually, there was a follow-up meeting with the community group as well, who are also interested in doing a stewarding program with the trails in their kind of their local area as well. So generally good response to the plan. People have mentioned it's long, there's some redundancies, so we are going to go back and strengthen the text. It sounds like MIASC had a look at it as well, and it would be great to get their comments as early as possible in the new year. And the goal would be ideally to have this ready for some level of more formal approval by early summer, June, July, and ideally also a draft that has maps and some graphics as well. So that's the goal right now. Great, thank you.
Super. We appreciate the work that people put into that. And yes, Miask has some or is working on their feedback, and we'll get that to you. Great. So we'll turn to the next item. I think Councillor Donaldson, you had a councillor's update as well.
Thank you very much. So we're moving quite quickly through, well, swiftly, I should say, not quickly, very systematically through the budget discussions with CFO Mr. Creek. And we'll be revisiting that in the new year, possibly third week of January. We've covered, we finalized the priorities for the 2026 budget, and there's a few other things we need to consider. And that's in my report here, things like the collective bargaining outcomes and some ongoing discussions with policing costs, that sort of thing. We're not ready to report out on that yet because there's still a lot of moving parts. The annual grant and aid application will be opening up in the new year, and the closing date of that, of course, is March 15th, as is every year. It's on the district website, and it aligns itself with the evaluation matrix that we had adopted from 2024. So looking forward to seeing that process take place again. West Shore Parks and Recreation Society, their last meeting, they're going to unroll a marketing theme, something a little new. This is a bit of their PR about educating the public of where we have come from through the decades, and our marketing team is so enthusiastic, so they're going to have lots of fun activities throughout the recreation center and different programs and whatnot that are theme related with the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. So look forward to, they're calling it the Rewind, Refresh, and Recreate. So we'll see how that pans out. We're on target with our finances. The Q3 report was pretty healthy, not a lot of overages, pretty close to what we had expected, so we're happy with that. I had reported previously about a new storage policy that was coming up, and so we're closer to that now, and that'll be put out to the tenants of the property. We have various sea cans scattered throughout the property, and so we're seeing that that is actually a value for us, and just to make it so that it's achievable both financially and it's a lot of money to build more buildings and storage areas, but clearly the sea cans are something that is convenient. So we will be purchasing those and then renting out the spaces, and eventually the old ones that have been brought in, the private ones, they will be moved on, and so there'll be a phase-in process as well as a fee tier, so that there'll be commercial and nonprofit, and they've got a policy they're working on for that. So that will be done over time, not to hit some of the nonprofit groups too harshly. Some of those will be heated and some of them will not, because different equipment requires drying and whatnot. The other thing that has been taking place is preservation of the Gary Oak Meadow Trail, and we've engaged a consultant to come up with a plan for that. I did report previously that our own Andy McKinnon had come and done a great presentation as well, and gave us some very good pointers as to the purpose of having some fencing and stewardship, and with that, similarly to, I think, what we've talked about with bufferlands too, an educational component. There's a lot to learn about these sorts of things, and keeping dogs and people on trails, and not traversing and trampling over sensitive ecosystems and the flora and fauna that are amongst this throughout this meadow. The regional master plan is ongoing. We'll be seeing a revised draft coming up in the next while. There's been lots of feedback from the membership municipalities, us being one of them, so I'm looking forward to that as well. The Greater Victoria Public Library, again, everybody's working on budgets, and so they are making visits to the different municipalities with budget presentations. They have been recruiting more staff, which is one of the reasons their budget will be going up. They are very close, if not completed, they're reducing their vacancy rate, so they're almost at the pre-COVID rate of staff. So it's taken them much longer than, say, it did for West Shore Parks and Recreation, but they're getting there. And with that, what we're going to start seeing is Sunday openings at some of the churches, or not churches, the libraries, and the first being the Central Branch. And so you'll also see here they talk about the book truck. This is not a vehicle, so it's not to be confused with bookmobile, which I had alluded to at another time as a project that would be considered. Book trucks are carts inside the library of books that are taken out of circulation but still have great values, so they do keep recirculating them, and a lot of great reads and great resources, so something to add to your own library at home. This is something I did quite a bit when my children were younger. We got a lot of lovely books, many Canadian authors and whatnot as well. And then we did have the open house for the fire department on November 12th, and it was well attended. We had a variety of activities happening. The JDA was present and had several boards up to show the process of their findings in the feasibility study, as well as staff were able to take participants on a tour of the building, both in the apparatus bay and the administration building, which was full of people. So hopefully people got to see and understand what we're faced with in an aging facility. Lots of different feedback, and so in 2026, I suspect we will be moving on to next steps. The Fire Hall Steering Committee will probably resuming in January or February. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. So the next item on the agenda is environment and natural areas, and my update is short. We worked at our last meeting at the Metchosin Environmental Advisory Select Committee on the PTASC Master Plan, Trails and Parks Master Plan, and we'll have some comments on that. And then we looked at some correspondence that the Mayor and Council received from Anita Strauss and Bev Bacon about the tanker ban that's been in the news a lot in the last few days, or last few weeks, I guess. And they shared with us some information relating to a committee of the whole meeting at the City of Victoria, where a motion was passed similar to the motion that me asked to put to us this evening. I think we all know about the tanker ban issues. There's a whole problem within sort of reversing environmental protections and increasing the risk of catastrophic oil spills on the North Coast. And both the province of British Columbia and the Coastal First Nations are opposing the lifting of the ban. And MEAS thought that it would be a good idea for us to join Victoria and potentially other municipalities who are writing now to the federal and provincial governments on the topic. So there's a motion here from the committee, which I'll read out. The council, I'll make the motion. The council requests the mayor write to the provincial and federal governments in support of continuing the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act tanker ban protection of BC's coast from the threat of oil spills, economic disruption, and environmental harm associated with new oil pipelines and tanker traffic. If someone would like to second that, I would offer a few more comments.
I'll second.
Thanks so much, Councillor Shukin. So I guess at this point, we've heard that there's an agreement between the federal government and Alberta to proceed with a pipeline to the coast, and then therefore the notion of lifting the tanker ban. So I think it's timely to get a letter in, and show our support for maintaining the tanker ban on the coast. Mayor Little.
Yeah, thank you. So we discussed this in essence at the last council meeting, and council asked if I would write a letter to the Minister of Transport, and I did. That went out on December 4th. I noted the concerns regarding the tanker traffic and the fragility of the coastline along the south coast here, and the impossibility of a response in certain conditions, as we had noted before, outlining the support for the 2019 tanker moratorium, as well as thank you for their past leadership on that, and hopefully they will extend their protection that is provided to the north coast to the sensitive south coast as well. I did also give the recipients of the letter, our MP, the heads up that this was coming, and she provided a response I can read out as well. So that went out on December 4th. So I don't know if this motion is actually necessary because it's already gone to the Prime Minister and to Minister Stephen McKinnon, the Transport Canada, and it's copied to our MP Stephanie McLean, the Premier David Eby, the Honourable Randy Neal, the Minister of Water, Land, Resource Stewardship, Minister Adrian Dix, Minister of Energy and Climate Solutions, and the Honourable Minister Tim Hodgson, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. So a letter's already gone out. And also, it's a little bit unusual that we received this recommendation outside of receiving the minutes for the me-ask. That's usually how we do it. So if we were to think about writing yet another letter, I think we should wait and receive the minutes that's only respectful from me-ask, and then consider their recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. You know, overall, I'm supportive of the motion. I have to recognize that we continue to have a very complicated relationship with fossil fuels, and it's bound to be complicated for decades to come. But lifting the oil tanker ban on the North Coast, I think, is something that should concern all coastal communities. So that's my view on a broader perspective. But on a procedural matter, I wonder if we might set this aside until we see the letter. I haven't seen the letter that Mayor Little has written recently. And the other thing too that I would maybe request is some support in writing any subsequent letter, because I think the nature of the letter is bound to be, to make it effective, is bound to need some work as well. Sorry, some input from yourself, Councillor Gray, and maybe me ask as well. But so I'm wondering if we might park this now, and maybe Mayor Little. I think the letter went out very recently, so it might be neat to.
Yeah, through the chair. So this letter went out just on Friday, as well as the response, the preliminary response from Minister McLean came out on Friday as well. So I can send that to all of council.
Maybe do you mind reading us? You offered to read us what Minister McLean responded with?
Sure. Preliminary response. On behalf of MP McLean, we want to be clear, any new pipeline through BC needs approval from the Indigenous communities in the province of BC, and is to be private sector constructed and financed. MP McLean is very proud of this beautiful place we call home on the west coast of Canada. She's pleased that the MOU requires Canada and Alberta to engage with British Columbia immediately in a trilateral discussion on any pipeline project from Alberta. She's also pleased that Canada and Alberta agree to engage meaningfully with Indigenous peoples in British Columbia with the involvement of the BC government. Our government's goal is always to work in partnership with provinces and territories We are a confederation and are taking a collaborative approach. To that end, we are engaged in productive conversations with Premier Eby that have helped us to advance more major projects in BC than any other provinces. British Columbians are proud of the coast, and this government will always work to protect it in partnership with provincial counterparts and Indigenous communities. Major projects come with major responsibilities, and we're committed to ensuring that any proposal is assessed against strict environmental safety and Indigenous consultation standards. The federal government is also clear that any new pipeline must be paired with the Pathways Alliance decarbonization project, which significantly reduces emissions from the oil sands. This aligns with the commitment to ensure that any future energy projects are low cost, low risk, and low carbon as a part of Canada's broader climate competitiveness strategy. At the same time, it's important to note that at the same time, it is important to note that Canadian energy is produced under some of the most stringent environmental and regulatory standards in the world, ensuring that any developments meet high expectations for safety, sustainability, and environmental protection. Lastly, we need to diversify our markets considering the challenges we face from abroad. So that's from the administrative assistant of Stephanie McLean MP.
Thank you very much. It sounds like she got the message on the northern tanker ban, but I'm with Councillor Schuchen's idea here. Maybe I should explain the motion that we passed the other night. Mayor Little, you raised, from the table and referred to our previous correspondence, which was to do with tankers off Metchosin coast. But I'm pleased you've gone ahead and talked about the northern moratorium as well in the letter, in addition to what we had talked about at council. But why don't we, if the committee is fine with it, we'll withdraw the motion tonight. Great, we'll get copies of the letters and take a look at that, and I can run it, take a look at it myself and see if there's anything further to do through me, ask or not. And to your point, Councillor Shu can provide some wording in the event that we should do something else. But very much appreciate the effort you put in there, Mayor Little. So I think that's a wrap for, and we've got the, really the information package here of correspondence from the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, the 2026 AVIC AGM and convention call for resolutions. So I think the dates here are such that the meeting will be held April 24th to April 26th in Victoria. And I believe they're taking resolutions all the way up to 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, February 12th. So I've let MEASC know about that, and I suppose there may be other advisory committees and also ourselves. If there's ideas we've got or resolutions we want to get forward, we've got a few meetings between now and February 12th to bring them to council. Mayor Little.
Yeah, thank you. I was talking to the mayor of Dajing-Geets up on the north coast, and she was saying that it might be good to have a joint resolution from Metchosin at this end, right up to Dajing-Geets, formerly Queen Charlotte, a resolution regarding protection of the coast from oil spills and perhaps an extension of the tanker ban from the north coast to some of the south coast. I'm not exactly sure what the wording would be, but let's chew that over. And I think that would go very well, since this is the Association of the Vancouver Island Coastal Communities. So I would encourage everybody to think towards that.
Sounds like a great idea. And you've got contacts, it sounds like, as well, in terms of putting forward a joint resolution.
Right. Say that question again.
I said you have contacts to put forward a joint resolution.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Great. Thank you. I think that's a wonderful idea. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight. Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Thanks so much. Thanks to the staff for the help with the AV and setting up the meeting.